loved one calling a name that would never be heard again. The investigators moved with measured precision, their eyes scanning every inch of space, trying to make sense of the unimaginable. A heavy weight hung over the room, a sense that something greater than life had been lost here. A lifeless body was found on the floor of her own home. A scene so horrific that it could only be described as the work of deliberate cruelty. A shocking sight, it spoke of a desperate struggle. The cord was tightly wrapped around her neck, its marks a brutal signature of the violence she had endured. The body spoke volumes about what had happened, though not enough to reveal the identity of the monster responsible. The room was in chaos, an overturned table, scattered belongings, painting a grim picture of her terrible final moments. The victim was fighting for more than just herself. The autopsy revealed that the victim was fighting not for one life, but for two. In an instant, both lives were extinguished, leaving behind a chilling silence that screamed betrayal and unimaginable loss. And in that silence, an unspoken question hung in the air like smoke. What kind of monster could have done this? The answer, when it comes, will chill everyone to the bone. Saga Forsgren was a young woman from Örebro, Sweden. Born in the early 2000s, Saga grew up in a small but vibrant Swedish city. From a young age, she was known for her kind and caring nature, as well as her artistic and creative spirit. At the age of 5, Saga began sketching animals and landscapes, impressing her family with her natural talent. Despite her artistic upbringing, Saga had a keen interest in science. She spent hours collecting insects and studying plants in her grandmother's garden. This blend of art and science became a defining characteristic of her personality. Saga's village school provided a nurturing environment where her teachers recognized her potential early on. She excelled in school, particularly in subjects related to literature and the arts, and had dreams of building a future full of possibility. At 8 years old, Saga won a local art contest, which boosted her confidence and fueled her passion. She became known in her community for her imaginative drawings and stories. Her parents made sure to balance her artistic pursuits with academics, emphasizing the importance of education. Saga came from a loving family and maintained close relationships with her parents and siblings. Her friends often described her as a bright and cheerful individual who brought light into any room she entered. She enjoyed spending time outdoors, exploring Sweden's picturesque landscapes, and often expressed her love for nature through her art and poetry. As she transitioned into adulthood, Saga began pursuing a career that aligned with her passion for creativity and helping others. She also dreamed of starting a family, and the dreams quickly became reality. She met her beloved man, and their romance began to develop very actively. Saga, a vibrant and ambitious 20-year-old, was 7 months pregnant and eagerly anticipating the arrival of her first child. During this period, she was in a relationship with Magam Madan Ibrahim, whom she affectionately called Amin. Their 2-year relationship had been filled with ups and downs, but Saga was deeply in love with him. The couple was preparing for the birth of their son with great anticipation. According to all medical forecasts, the baby was perfectly healthy, and Saga was counting down the weeks until she would hold him in her arms. The young mother-to-be threw herself into preparing for this new chapter with unparalleled enthusiasm. Saga spent her days arranging the baby's nursery, carefully selecting furniture, and buying the essentials every new mother needs. From tiny baby clothes to accessories, every purchase brought her immense joy. She even shared her excitement with her social media followers, posting pictures of her growing belly and the adorable items she had bought for her baby. Her posts were filled with positivity, reflecting the happiness she felt at becoming a mother. She documented this life-changing journey meticulously, creating a digital diary filled with hope and love. Melissa, Saga's devoted mother, played a significant role during this period. She often visited her daughter to offer support and guidance. Saga appreciated these visits, but she was also keen to maintain some privacy, especially when it came to her relationship with Amin. On December 28th, Saga confided in her mother that Amin would be visiting her. She wanted some alone time with him, hoping they could work through the growing tension in their relationship. Melissa respected her daughter's wishes and decided not to interfere, leaving Saga to navigate her personal life. Saga's radiance and charisma had always drawn people to her. She was kind, well-mannered, and deeply optimistic. Her circle of friends admired her warmth and her ability to connect with others effortlessly. Despite her outward confidence, her relationship with Amin was a source of growing concern. Amin, a Somali refugee, had a vastly different cultural background, and his family held traditional values that clashed with Saga's modern European upbringing. Saga's relatives were wary of these cultural differences, but she remained determined to make the relationship work. Her love for Amin was unwavering, even though his reluctance to introduce her to his family troubled her deeply. This secrecy often led to conflicts between them, yet Saga remained hopeful that they could overcome these challenges. On April 29, 2023, Melissa set out to visit Saga at her apartment, located 100 kilometers from Stockholm. She intended to help her daughter prepare for the baby's arrival and collect a few items she had promised to bring. As she approached the apartment, Melissa called her other daughter, chatting casually as she walked to the door. However, when she rang the doorbell, there was no response. She tried multiple times, knocked, and even used the intercom, but the silence inside was unsettling. Concerned, Melissa called Saga's phone and sent several text messages, but there was still no reply. She touched the door handle and was surprised to find it open. At first, Melissa thought Saga might have gone out and forgotten their plans. However, something felt off. Saga was notoriously cautious and never left her door unlocked, even for a short errand. As she stepped inside, her unease grew. The sound of running water drew Melissa into the kitchen, where she instinctively reached for the faucet, turning it off with a sharp twist. A wave of unease washed over her as she called out for her daughter, her voice echoing in the silent apartment. The only response was an oppressive quiet. Melissa stepped into the hallway, her heart quickening with each step toward the living room. The space was shrouded in darkness. The light inexplicably turned off. Her hand trembled slightly as she flipped the switch. The harsh glare illuminated a scene that would forever be seared into her memory. Saga lay crumpled on the floor, her body unnaturally contorted, as if abandoned by life itself. Her long hair cascaded across her face, obscuring her delicate features. The stark reality of the moment was unbearable. A table lamp's cord was wound tightly around her neck, cutting deeply into her skin. A heavy tabletop had been overturned, pinning her slender frame to the floor, its weight cruelly crushing her. Melissa's legs almost gave way beneath her as she rushed forward, her maternal instincts overriding the rising tide of dread. "Saga!" Melissa's voice cracked as she knelt beside her daughter, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She screamed her name, pleading for a response. Her trembling fingers fumbled with the cord, desperately attempting to free Saga from its deadly grip. She used every ounce of strength to push the table off her daughter's chest, but the unnatural stillness of Saga's body told her the truth she couldn't bear to accept. Saga's skin was cold, her lips pale. Melissa knew, deep within her soul, that her precious daughter and her unborn grandchild were gone. Panic consumed her as she reached for her phone, frantically dialing emergency services. The operator's calm voice felt distant as Melissa described the horrific scene through choked sobs. She began CPR, her tears falling onto Saga's lifeless face. Each compression was a plea, each breath a desperate hope to undo the nightmare. When the medics arrived, they confirmed what Melissa already knew. They pronounced Saga dead, their voices clinical and detached, as if shielding themselves from the emotional gravity of the moment. The air in the apartment felt suffocating, thick with grief and unanswered questions. Melissa sat frozen, her mind replaying the haunting sight of her daughter's lifeless form. Saga had been so full of life, brimming with dreams and excitement for the future. The cruel finality of her death seemed impossible to comprehend. The police arrived soon after, their presence filling the apartment with an eerie blend of authority. They meticulously examined every inch of the scene, their movements precise and deliberate. Saga's injuries painted a grim picture. Bruises on her neck from the cord, blood matted in her hair, and abrasions on her arms suggesting a desperate struggle. The overturned furniture and scattered jewelry boxes hinted at a staged robbery, but the absence of forced entry deepened the mystery. At first glance, the scene hinted at a struggle but raised questions about the possibility of a staged robbery or even suicide. However, Melissa vehemently dismissed the latter. She knew her daughter, her joy in impending motherhood, and her meticulous preparations for the baby. Saga would never have harmed herself, let alone the child she was so eager to welcome. The investigators delved deeper, leveraging forensic evidence to paint a clearer picture. Fingerprints collected from various surfaces in the apartment, DNA samples from under Saga's nails, and detailed analyses of her injuries revealed an undeniable conclusion. This was a homicide. The forensic expert determined that Saga had died from strangulation, the time of death estimated between 1 and 3 a.m. The autopsy of her unborn son, a baby boy weighing 2 kilograms, only deepened the heartbreak. Melissa's grief turned to rage as she demanded justice, vowing not to rest until the perpetrator was brought to account. The investigation shocked everyone who knew Saga. She had no enemies, no ties to the criminal world, and no reason to fall victim to such a brutal act. As detectives pieced together the events leading up to her death, they began with her closest relationships. Melissa recounted the evening of April 28th, when she and Saga had dined with friends. Throughout the evening, Melissa noticed her daughter's distracted demeanor. Saga frequently checked her phone, her anxious behavior betraying her thoughts. She confided in Melissa that Amin had promised to speak to his family about their relationship and the pregnancy. This was a sensitive subject that had created mounting tension between them. Amin, a Somali Muslim raised in Europe, feared his conservative family's reaction to his relationship with Saga, a half-Thai, half-European Christian. Saga had always approached their cultural differences with optimism. She loved Amin and believed they could build a life together despite the challenges. But Melissa had her doubts. The secrecy surrounding their relationship and Amin's reluctance to introduce Saga to his family hinted at deeper issues. Though Amin himself had grown up in Europe and embraced some modern values, he remained bound by his family's traditional views. These differences often led to heated arguments between the couple, exacerbated by the pressures of Saga's pregnancy. The detectives, considering all angles, began to focus on Amin. They hypothesized that he might have disclosed the relationship to his family, triggering an aggressive response that escalated into tragedy. Melissa corroborated this theory with details of Saga's growing frustration. She had given Amin an ultimatum to come clean to his family or ending their relationship. This ultimatum, combined with Amin's fear of familial rejection, created a volatile situation. Further investigation revealed troubling evidence. Forensic analysis uncovered Amin's DNA under Saga's fingernails, consistent with the struggle. His search history raised additional red flags, with inquiries about harm to pregnant women pointing to premeditation. Moreover, despite his initial claims of being elsewhere, geolocation data placed Amin near Saga's apartment at the time of her death. These findings cast Amin as the prime suspect, unraveling his narrative and painting a chilling picture of betrayal and violence. As detectives probed deeper, a pattern of manipulation and deceit emerged. Amin had reportedly attempted to maintain control over Saga, promising change while evading responsibility. A witness, a woman named Diana, came forward, alleging that Amin had once tried to coerce her into harming Saga to induce a miscarriage. This disturbing revelation, combined with Amin's evasive behavior and evidence of infidelity, shattered any remaining illusions of innocence. This case underscores the urgent need for dialogue and education around intercultural relationships. For Saga, love was a bridge across their differences. But for Amin, it became a battleground. Such tragedies highlight the importance of fostering environments where cultural understanding and mutual respect are prioritized, preventing fear and prejudice from dictating lives. In the aftermath, Swedish society grappled with questions of integration, cultural adaptation, and the pressures placed on individuals caught between conflicting worlds. For many, Saga's story became a rallying cry for change, a testament to the need for empathy and understanding in a world often divided by differences. As the investigation progressed, detectives turned their attention to Amin's family, probing for any potential involvement in the crime. Suspicion briefly fell on Amin's mother, whose movements on the night of Saga's death raised eyebrows. Surveillance footage showed that she left her home late at night, leading investigators to look into her involvement in the murder. However, a detailed review of her timeline confirmed that she had only gone to a nearby store, returning home within 15 minutes. There was no evidence directly linking her or any other family member to the crime. Nevertheless, the family's strained dynamics added layers of complexity to the case. Amin's mother, known for her strict adherence to traditional values, had made no secret of her disapproval of his relationship with Saga. Text messages uncovered during the investigation revealed the depth of her disdain. In one heated exchange, she furiously confronted Amin upon discovering his car parked near Saga's house. Her message was unequivocal. He was no longer welcome in their home. To her, Amin's involvement with a Christian woman was an unforgivable betrayal of their family's traditions. Amin, desperate to maintain peace, lied to his mother, claiming he had not visited Saga. His deceit momentarily calmed the situation, but left him increasingly isolated and conflicted. Melissa, Saga's mother, provided critical insight into the challenges her daughter faced. According to Melissa, the relationship between Saga and Amin began to deteriorate the moment Saga became pregnant. Amin's initial reaction to the pregnancy was one of panic and rejection. He reportedly pressured Saga to terminate the pregnancy, citing the likely backlash from his family. However, Saga stood firm, resolute in her decision to keep the baby. She reassured herself and others that she could raise the child alone if necessary, buoyed by the unwavering support of her own family. In October, Saga shared the news of her pregnancy with her family, who responded with overwhelming love and encouragement. They rallied around her, offering emotional and practical support as she prepared for motherhood. Saga appeared hopeful during this time, her joy tempered only by the growing tensions with Amin. As the months passed, however, the cultural and ideological gap between them became increasingly evident. Saga confided in Melissa about the difficulties of reconciling their differing worldviews. She often expressed frustration, lamenting that unless Amin adopted a more progressive mindset, their relationship would remain fraught with conflict. By late winter, a fragile sense of stability seemed to emerge. Amin appeared to come to terms with Saga's pregnancy and even began participating in preparations for the baby's arrival. He accompanied her to a few medical appointments and helped set up the nursery in Saga's new apartment. This larger, brighter space was a symbol of her optimism, a place where she could envision a happy future with her child. Saga threw herself into decorating the nursery, carefully selecting every detail, from the soft pastel wallpaper to the stuffed animals that lined the shelves. Despite these outward signs of harmony, ominous undercurrents persisted. On some days, he seemed genuinely invested in their future as a family, while on others, he withdrew entirely, citing the pressures of his family's expectations. Saga sensed that his fears were far from resolved, but she chose to focus on the positives, clinging to the hope that he would eventually embrace their new life together. Friends recalled instances where Saga seemed unusually quiet or distracted, her radiant smile dimmed by worry. Melissa remembered the subtle ways her daughter tried to mask her concerns, often deflecting questions about Amin with vague reassurances. By March 2023, the cracks in their relationship were once again visible. An incident involving a woman named Diana cast a shadow over Amin's character. Diana confided in Saga, claiming that Amin had attempted to coerce her into harming Saga to provoke a miscarriage. He had allegedly suggested that Diana kick Saga in the stomach to end the pregnancy. Shocked and enraged, Saga confronted Amin, who denied the accusation, dismissing it as a malicious fabrication. Though he managed to calm Saga temporarily, the incident left a lasting impression on her and her family. Melissa was particularly unsettled by this revelation, as it added to her growing unease about Amin. She believed that while Saga was fiercely independent and capable of handling herself, her daughter's unwavering optimism blinded her to Amin's manipulative tendencies. The family's concerns, however, did little to dissuade Saga from believing in a future with him. As detectives pieced together the events leading up to Saga's death, a clearer picture emerged. On April 27, Saga and Amin had planned to spend the evening together. However, Amin avoided her, claiming work obligations as an excuse. That evening, Saga, increasingly frustrated, gave him an ultimatum. He must tell his family about their relationship and impending child or risk losing her forever. This conversation marked a critical turning point, with both parties grappling with the weight of their decisions. On April 27, their correspondence continued throughout the day. Saga was restless, her nerves fraying under the pressure of waiting for Amin's response. Melissa noticed her daughter's distracted state and attributed it to the ongoing tensions. According to messages retrieved from Saga's phone, the couple exchanged texts until late in the evening. At 11 p.m., Amin sent a message stating that he could not bring himself to tell his family about Saga or their child. He argued that his family's approval mattered more than an extramarital relationship, even if it involved his own offspring. Saga's disappointment was palpable. She continued to press him, insisting that the truth would eventually come out. Her text reflected her resolve to seek financial support for their child if they broke up, a stance that likely intensified Amin's fears. By 11:15 p.m., Amin sent his final message to Saga, admitting that the situation was overwhelming him and that he felt as though his heart would burst from the stress. This was the last communication Saga received from him before her death. Investigators uncovered evidence suggesting that Amin had been near Saga's apartment that night, contradicting his alibi of being at home. This revelation, coupled with the DNA evidence and his search history, which included queries about harm to pregnant women, painted a chilling portrait of premeditation. Saga's final hours were undoubtedly filled with anxiety and heartache. The young mother-to-be, whose life was filled with so much hope and promise, likely never anticipated the violent end that awaited her. Amin's internal conflict, his fear of family rejection, cultural shame, and the responsibilities of fatherhood, seemed to culminate in a catastrophic decision. After collecting a lot of evidence, Amin was detained so that he could not leave the country. The prosecution argued that Amin's actions following Saga's death, including the staged robbery, served only to deepen his culpability. Their case was bolstered by the discovery of several items reported missing from Saga's apartment, which were later found in Amin's possession during searches conducted by law enforcement. When questioned, Amin claimed that these items were either his personal belongings or gifts from a friend, but investigators found no credible evidence to support his assertions. One of the prosecution's most compelling pieces of evidence was the DNA traces found under Saga's nails, suggesting a violent struggle before her death. This was further supported by a forensic analysis revealing that Saga had sexual intercourse with a partner shortly before her demise. Amin admitted to being that partner, claiming the encounter was consensual and had occurred days earlier. However, the prosecution cast serious doubt on his story, highlighting inconsistencies in his timeline and pointing to the presence of his DNA throughout the crime scene, despite his initial denial of ever having visited Saga's apartment. Amin's credibility continued to decline as the trial unfolded. He initially told investigators that he didn't know Saga's address, yet the evidence suggested otherwise. Forensic experts found significant traces of his DNA throughout the apartment, contradicting his claims. Additionally, a witness named Diana had previously reported Amin's concerning behavior, alleging that he had tried to coerce her into harming Saga to terminate the pregnancy. This testimony, combined with Amin's increasingly questionable narrative, painted a picture of premeditated intent rather than a crime of passion. Amin's search history also included queries about whether physical trauma, such as a kick to the stomach, could harm or kill an unborn child. This discovery reinforced the prosecution's theory of premeditation. Moreover, numerous text messages between Amin and Saga, spanning several months, were presented in court. These messages, dating back to November 2022, revealed escalating tensions between the couple, largely centered on Saga's pregnancy. The prosecution pointed to the text messages exchanged on April 28th, the night before Saga's death, as particularly significant. In these messages, Saga appeared to be urging Amin to tell his family about their relationship and the impending birth of their child. She repeatedly pressed him to confront his fears, framing his silence as unacceptable. The defense attempted to argue that Saga's persistence had placed undue emotional pressure on Amin, but the prosecution dismissed this as an irrelevant justification for murder. According to the prosecution's timeline, Amin never intended to disclose his relationship with Saga to his family. Instead, he went to her apartment, armed with an ulterior motive. They theorized that Saga's insistence on transparency and financial support had cornered Amin, leaving him to act out of fear and desperation. In their words, his response was cold-blooded and calculated, driven by a banal fear of familial rejection rather than genuine remorse or concern. The defense argued that the DNA evidence found on Saga's body, particularly under her nails, could have been left during previous encounters, given their intimate relationship. However, Melissa, Saga's mother, strongly refuted this notion. Melissa described her daughter as meticulously clean, especially during her pregnancy. Saga had always been conscious of hygiene, and Melissa was confident that Saga would have taken a shower and changed into fresh clothes before meeting with Amin that evening. This argument suggested that the DNA evidence was fresh, likely deposited during the fatal struggle. This crucial point significantly undermined the defense's claim that the DNA could have been residual from earlier interactions. It became clear that the physical evidence aligned with the prosecution's narrative of a violent confrontation. Amin's behavior following Saga's death further implicated him. In the hours after the murder, Amin deleted Saga from his Snapchat and other social media platforms. He also cleared his digital correspondence with her from the days leading up to her death. These actions, while not direct evidence of guilt, strongly suggested an attempt to obscure his connection to the crime. Investigators, however, were able to recover the deleted data, which provided additional insights into the dynamics of their relationship and Amin's state of mind leading up to the murder. The restored data included conversations revealing to confront his family about their relationship. His final message to Saga expressed his mounting anxiety, claiming that the situation was overwhelming him. One of the most critical pieces of evidence was Amin's geolocation data. Records showed that around 8 p.m. on April 28th, Amin was near Saga's apartment building. Witnesses also reported seeing a man matching his description loitering in the area, though he didn't approach the building at that time. Investigators theorized that Amin was waiting, either gathering his resolve or ensuring that Saga was alone. The situation took a more sinister turn when investigators uncovered critical evidence about Amin's activities during the night of Saga's murder. Phone records revealed that Amin's phone was deliberately placed in airplane mode between midnight and 2 a.m., a 2-hour window aligning with the estimated time of Saga's death. During this period, Amin's close friend Samir had made multiple attempts to contact him, all of which went unanswered. At precisely 2:16 a.m., Amin's phone was reactivated, and location data placed him far from Saga's apartment. This timeline fits seamlessly with forensic experts' conclusions, effectively dismantling Amin's alibi and implicating him directly in the crime. The mounting evidence painted a harrowing picture. Forensic specialists confirmed that Amin's DNA was present on the cord used to strangle Saga, as well as on the overturned furniture near her body. Scratches on Amin's arms, consistent with defensive wounds, matched the pattern of injuries on Saga's nails, which had remnants of his skin underneath. This corroborated the theory of a struggle, suggesting Saga fought valiantly for her life and that of her unborn child. These findings rendered Amin's claims of innocence increasingly implausible, shifting the focus toward his motives. Amin's actions, though deeply personal, were also shaped by the weight of his cultural upbringing. As a Somali Muslim raised in Europe, Amin lived in two worlds, each demanding different allegiances. On one hand, he genuinely cared for Saga, but on the other, he was bound by the rigid expectations of his family, who viewed their relationship as a dishonor. These pressures, though not excusing his actions, played a pivotal role in shaping the tragic trajectory of events. As the trial progressed, Amin's stories changed several times, further implying his guilt. One of his strange stories involved a gang of robbers. According to this version, Amin had hidden a large sum of money in Saga's apartment, money he claimed was targeted by criminals. He alleged that these robbers broke in to retrieve the cash and killed Saga when she tried to intervene. However, this account quickly fell apart under scrutiny. Investigators found no evidence of forced entry, a fact that strongly suggested Saga had either willingly let her assailant in, or the individual had access to her home. Amin's possession of a spare key aligned far more closely with the evidence. Despite being imprisoned for 9 months during the investigation, Amin never confessed to the crime. He continued to deny his involvement, but admitted certain truths that revealed the complexity of his motives. He confessed his fear of telling his family about Saga, the pregnancy, and their relationship. According to him, he genuinely loved Saga and their unborn child, but believed his family would disown him for the dishonor of being involved with a European Christian woman. Amin further admitted that his parents' conservative views left him feeling as though he had no right to pursue a relationship with someone outside his cultural and religious background. This internal conflict became a key point in understanding his actions, though it did not excuse them. Amin continued to claim that he never intended harm, emphasizing that murder was entirely out of character for him. He described this as the first and only criminal episode in his life, but the prosecution countered by painting a far darker picture. During the investigation, it was revealed that Amin had been unfaithful throughout his relationship with Saga. He had met and pursued relationships with multiple other women over the 2 years he was with her. While he denied these claims, evidence showed that many of these relationships involved intimacy. These details, while not directly linked to the crime, cast serious doubt on Amin's character and motives. The prosecution used this evidence to argue that Amin had a pattern of deceit and manipulation, further weakening his defense. Amin's lawyer tried to reframe the narrative, insisting that Amin was not guilty and that Saga's death was the result of a random robbery. Despite mounting evidence, the defense clung to this theory, claiming that the absence of a confession proved Amin's innocence. One aspect of the case that sparked widespread public outrage was the lack of charges related to the death of Saga's unborn child, a tragic victim whose life ended before it could begin. The young mother was eagerly anticipating the arrival of her baby, a healthy boy who represented hope, joy, and the future. Yet despite the circumstances of his death, the legal system failed to formally recognize him as a victim of the crime. This omission not only added to the heartbreak of Saga's family, but also ignited a fierce debate about the legal and moral framework surrounding unborn children in cases of violence. For Saga's loved ones, the baby was not just an extension of her, but an individual, a life with potential that was deliberately stolen. His absence was a void they could never fill, and the lack of acknowledgement by the legal system made their grief even harder to bear. They saw the omission as a denial of the baby's existence, a refusal to recognize his personhood and the magnitude of the loss they suffered. The family believed that justice demanded the inclusion of both mother and child in the charges brought against the accused, but the law's silence on this issue felt like a second betrayal. This failure also shed light on broader societal and legal challenges. In many jurisdictions, the rights of unborn children are contentious. Advocates for change argued that crimes resulting in the death of an unborn child should be prosecuted as separate offenses, reflecting the reality of dual losses for the victim's family. Others pointed to the need for clearer laws that balance reproductive rights with the need for justice in cases of violent acts against pregnant women. The prosecution's focus on the mother's murder to the exclusion of the child's death was seen as a missed opportunity to push for justice on a broader scale. For the public and Saga's family, the absence of charges for the death of her child wasn't just a legal oversight, it was a moral failing. It served as a painful reminder of how the law often lags behind the emotional and ethical realities faced by victims and their families. The case attracted significant media attention, not just because of the horrific nature of the crime, but also due to its broader implications. It reignited heated debates about migration, cultural integration, and the challenges faced by increasingly diverse societies like Sweden. Many pointed to the difficulties migrants encounter when trying to adapt to European societal norms and values. Critics argued that some communities resist integration and maintain rigid cultural practices, leading to clashes that can have devastating consequences. Saga's murder became a flashpoint for discussions about how to bridge cultural divides and prevent such tragedies in the future. Advocates for stricter migration policies pointed to cases like this as evidence of the need for tougher integration measures. Others countered by emphasizing the importance of fostering empathy, understanding, and dialogue between communities. The murder exposed the stark reality of how cultural and religious differences, when unresolved, can result in unimaginable loss. Public opinion on Amin's guilt was deeply divided. While many were convinced by the evidence against him, others, including members of his family, maintained that he was innocent. Amin's relatives described him as a kind and non-violent individual, incapable of committing such a heinous act. Their support for him remained steadfast, and they rejected the notion that he was motivated by cultural or religious conflicts. This division in public sentiment highlighted the emotional and contentious nature of the case. Supporters of Amin pointed to his lack of a prior criminal record and his claims of love for Saga and their child. However, critics saw his shifting stories, troubling online searches, and attempts to erase digital evidence as clear signs of guilt. For Saga's family, there was no doubt. They believed Amin's fear of familial rejection drove him to commit an unthinkable act. Having heard the arguments of the prosecution,